Nigeria's crackdown on currency abuse, e-money's arrest sparks national debate on cultural norms and financial discipline. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where culture, power, and truth collide. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. Today we explore a rising controversy in Nigeria that's shaking tables across Africa. The EFCC arrests a billionaire for spraying Naira. Now, tradition faces regulation. Is this justice or overreach? Let's unpack the truth behind the headlines. The recent arrest and release of Nigerian socialite and businessman Emeka Okonkwo, popularly known as E-Money, by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, for alleged currency abuse, has ignited widespread public discourse on the cultural practice of money spraying at social events. With high-profile Nigerians like Cubana chief priest Bobrisky and Terry Apala facing similar scrutiny, Nigeria is now witnessing a wave of institutional action aimed at enforcing Section 21(3) of the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) Act, which criminalizes currency mutilation. This development raises deeper questions about enforcement consistency, cultural modernization, and broader implications for other African nations grappling with informal monetary practices. The arrest of e-money and EFCC's renewed crusade. On Monday, April 29, 2025, operatives of the EFCC arrested e-money at his residence in Omoli Estate, Lagos, and transferred him to Abuja for questioning regarding the public spraying of Naira notes at a recent social function. This practice, commonly seen in Nigerian ceremonies as a symbol of generosity, status, and celebration, has long been embedded in cultural tradition. However, according to the EFCC and CBN regulations, such conduct is illegal. The EFCC, in a statement published by Premium Times, clarified that e-money was released after interrogation and cautioned in line with its public sensitization campaign on Naira protection. 3 days after his release, E-Money took to his Instagram page to issue a public advisory urging Nigerians to respect the law, stating, "Let's celebrate responsibly and avoid fines. Respect our currency. If you must give money at a party, make sure you put it in a basket, a bowl, or a box, not on the floor." This marked a notable shift in tone from E-Money and others like Cubana chief priest, who previously criticized the EFCC's tactics but have since echoed similar sentiments after facing legal consequences. Legal framework: currency abuse under Nigerian law section 21(3) of the Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007 reads, spraying of, dancing, or matching on the naira, or any note issued by the bank during social occasions or otherwise, howsoever, shall constitute an abuse and defacing of the currency notes and shall be punishable under the law by fines or imprisonment or both. This clause has become the cornerstone of the EFCC's enforcement action. Yet critics argue that such enforcement often appears selective, reactive, or performative, especially when it involves celebrities rather than systemic financial violators. Africa-wide comparison: informal currency practices and enforcement. Nigeria is not alone in facing the dilemma of informal cash handling customs that challenge modern financial laws. Across the African continent, Ghana discourages public money spraying but does not routinely enforce arrests, choosing instead a strategy of public sensitization through the Bank of Ghana and civil society groups. Kenya and Uganda have no explicit legislation against currency spraying, but have laws against defacement and promote digital alternatives for ceremonial gifting. In South Africa, strict monetary policies prohibit public defacing or misuse of the rand, but such practices are rare due to a more formalized gift-giving culture. DR Congo, Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire exhibit similar cultural practices in weddings and funerals, but lack robust enforcement mechanisms, often treating violations as cultural, not criminal issues. This points to a broader African paradox. How do we reconcile rich cultural traditions with financial modernity and institutional discipline, cultural conflict, or legal awakening? E-money's post-release call to respect the currency reflects an emerging realization among Nigeria's elite that culture must not defy law. Yet the clampdown has sparked debate over whether the EFCC's campaign is a genuine effort at public financial education or a diversion from more critical corruption cases. Prominent lawyer Festus Keyamo, SANE, told Channels TV in a recent interview, "We must protect the Naira, yes, but we must also question whether this kind of symbolic enforcement gets to the root of economic decay. Are we serious about monetary stability, or are we just playing optics?" For many Nigerians, this is not just about currency spraying, it's about trust. Trust in institutions, consistency in law enforcement, and a collective shift toward behavioral change. Forward looking analysis, the path to cultural reorientation and financial literacy. To ensure lasting impact, Nigeria must go beyond arrests and Instagram advisories. A national reorientation program is needed, one that includes public education campaigns led by EFCC, CBN, Nollywood influencers, and musicians, incentivizing digital transfers or QR-coded gift systems at parties to replace cash spraying. Curriculum additions in schools teaching the importance of currency integrity and respect, strengthening financial literacy programs in collaboration with mobile banking firms like OPay, Kuda, and PalmPay. Such efforts, if properly funded and integrated, can shift behavior over time while preserving cultural expression in legally compliant ways. The role of social media and celebrity influence. Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, have played dual roles, popularizing Naira abuse while now being used to reverse the trend. After high-profile warnings by Cubana chief priest Bobrisky and Terry Apala, many fans have taken note, with hashtags like Dashgacha, Respect the Naira, and Spray with Sense trending across platforms. If properly mobilized, celebrities can lead a transformation by modeling compliant behavior at public events and reinforcing the message that true prestige lies in lawful elegance, not reckless display. Traditional institutions and religious voices, silent or strategic. A striking omission in the ongoing Naira abuse debate is the muted response from Nigeria's traditional rulers, religious clerics, and cultural custodians. These institutions historically play pivotal roles in shaping societal values, yet they appear to be taking a back seat as the EFCC enforces monetary discipline. In a society where chieftaincy titles, elaborate weddings, and funeral ceremonies often involve open displays of wealth, the silence or strategic restraint of cultural leaders raises critical questions. Are they complicit, cautious, or conflicted? Could they be fearing backlash from communities that see money spraying as integral to prestige? Or are they waiting for clearer policy direction from the government before wading in? The Sultan of Sokoto, Oba of Lagos, and Uni of Ife, among others, have historically used their platforms to promote civic values, yet none have issued formal statements on this growing controversy. Similarly, leading Pentecostal pastors and Islamic scholars, some of whom preside over congregations where cash spraying occurs during Thanksgiving or donation drives, have remained publicly non-committal. This lack of vocal engagement reflects a deeper societal contradiction. When tradition clashes with regulation, who mediates the values? Revisiting Nigeria's currency law enforcement, history and contradictions. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN Act of 2007, is not new, yet enforcement has always been selective. Until recently, it was rare to see publicized arrests over currency spraying, despite its pervasiveness in Nigerian ceremonies for decades. Historically, several administrations turned a blind eye to such practices, either due to political expediency or cultural relativism. It wasn't until late 2023, amid rising inflation, currency redesign controversies, and Naira depreciation, that the EFCC began prioritizing Naira abuse enforcement. This renewed vigor is partly seen as an attempt to restore public confidence in Nigeria's monetary system. However, critics argue that without tackling larger systemic corruption, such as illicit financial flows, procurement fraud, and political campaign financing, the focus on Naira spraying appears both petty and performative. Dr. Udoka Chukwuemeka, a political economist at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, told Arise News, "You can't clean the sink when the tap is still running dirty water. Arresting celebrities for money spraying while politicians embezzle public funds unchecked will only deepen cynicism." Symbolism of spraying money, more than just abuse. Understanding why the practice of money spraying is so entrenched requires a cultural lens. In many Nigerian communities, spraying money symbolizes public appreciation, success, and honor. It serves as a non-verbal social currency, acknowledging achievement or status. It transforms gift giving into a visual theatrical act that bonds celebrants and their guests. Thus, for many Nigerians, a party without money spraying feels incomplete, and the absence of it may even be perceived as disrespect or poverty. This reveals the emotional and cultural weight behind the practice, making it far more complex than a mere legal violation. For effective behavioral change, the state must therefore propose equally celebratory but lawful alternatives, such as gift envelopes with public announcements, digital transfers displayed on LED screens, ceremonial money trees, or gift stations where guests deposit envelopes or scan codes only by replacing the symbolism, not just banning the act, can change be sustainable. Case study. Comparison. Ethiopia's control of wedding expenditure and cash culture. Nigeria is not the first African country to wrestle with extravagant public ceremonies involving money. In Ethiopia, a 2021 directive from the Addis Ababa City Administration placed caps on wedding expenditures, banned luxury car processions, and limited monetary displays in weddings and funerals. The policy aimed to tackle inflationary pressure and reduce wasteful spending among the middle class. Initial resistance was fierce, with critics claiming the state was policing joy. But over time, the shift to more modest, digitally facilitated events gained traction, especially among youth influenced by urban minimalism and financial realism. The Ethiopian example underscores that cultural practices can be reformed through policy consistency, public awareness, and role model alignment. Reform must be framed as aspirational, not punitive, emphasizing dignity, class, and modernity over legal compliance alone. Nigeria, by contrast, still lacks a national reorientation plan to match enforcement with education and engagement. The bigger picture: Naira abuse and Nigeria's currency confidence crisis. The crackdown on Naira spraying is unfolding against a backdrop of currency instability. As of May 2025, the Naira continues to fluctuate, with unofficial rates widening against the dollar. Citizens, especially in the informal sector, lack confidence in the Naira as a store of value, driving hoarding of foreign currencies and a cash-first economy. Experts at Afrinvest and Fitch Ratings argue that efforts to curb Naira abuse must be complemented by strengthening monetary policy, credibility, expanding financial inclusion, promoting digital payment adoption, reforming the Bureau de Change (BDC) system. Unless the Naira itself is seen as strong, stable, and respected, public reverence for the currency will remain superficial, and symbolic gestures, like bans on money spraying, will have limited impact. Class, perception, and the social psychology of spraying. The public response to the EFCC's crackdown has not been uniform. While a segment of the population, especially policy analysts, financial institutions, and legal professionals, support the clampdown. Others, particularly within lower income and entertainment focused communities, perceive the arrests as class based persecution. Spraying money is deeply interwoven with aspirational identity in Nigeria. It is often seen as a symbolic announcement of one's transition from struggle to success. In public spaces, especially weddings, naming ceremonies, and music concerts, money spraying is not just a show of wealth, but a social performance of arrival, of making it. For many who rise from poverty to prominence, it's a ritualized rejection of past hardship. This has created a generational and class divide. Urban elites and policymakers view it as irresponsible and a sign of backwardness. Working class Nigerians see it as empowerment and recognition, especially when it happens on a public stage, with mobile cameras capturing every moment for Instagram and TikTok. This divide must be understood if national behavioral change is to be achieved. Enforcement without empathy, without grasping why people do what they do, will result in defiance, not reform. As Dr. Yetunde Bakare, a sociologist at the University of Ibadan, puts it, you cannot lecture people out of their only means of symbolic wealth display. You have to offer a new ritual, a new celebration language, one that is dignified, accessible, and legal. Urban versus rural dynamics, two worlds, one law. Another tension emerging from this national debate is the urban rural disparity in the application and reception of the currency laws. In cosmopolitan cities like Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, where the EFCC's reach is more visible, arrests are frequent and media fueled. But in Nigeria's vast rural areas, where weddings can attract entire villages, money spraying continues unabated. Many rural dwellers are unaware of the laws, and those who are informed often believe they don't apply to local celebrations. This creates two parallel systems of public conduct, one policed by modern enforcement agencies, and the other guided by cultural custodians. In Kano, Kebbi, Anambra, and Benue, traditional marriage rites involve contributions and open gifting that, while less flamboyant than city style spraying, still involve cash exchange rituals that technically violate the CBN Act. Without a uniform application of the law, public perception of fairness erodes, and accusations of regional bias, ethnic favoritism, or selective prosecution begin to circulate. To counter this, community engagement must extend beyond metropolitan areas. Traditional rulers and religious leaders must be co opted as cultural interpreters of the law. Local language translations of Naira protection laws should be disseminated through radio, town criers, and faith based networks. Toward a Pan African framework on currency respect and cultural expression. The Nigerian case is a microcosm of a broader African challenge. How do we preserve cultural vibrancy while upholding monetary sovereignty and institutional discipline? Across the continent, the informal economy is dominant. Weddings in Cameroon, burials in Ghana, festivals in Benin, and chieftaincy coronations in Sierra Leone all feature monetary rituals. Whether it's notes thrown in dance circles or coins scattered as blessings, the tension between tradition and law is widespread. African governments, rather than criminalizing cultural forms, should consider developing a continental code of financial decorum anchored in respect for national currencies, public education campaigns about legal boundaries, culturally aligned alternatives for gift giving and celebration, digital innovations like QR code, party wallets, e-gift booths, and ceremonial mobile money platforms, cross-country knowledge exchange to share what works in community sensitization. Such a framework could be championed through ECOWAS, AU cultural commissions, or regional financial authorities, offering a roadmap to harmonize tradition with economic integrity. Nollywood, music, and the rebranding of financial etiquette. The Nigerian entertainment industry particularly Nollywood and Afro beats, holds unmatched power in shaping public behavior. These sectors have normalized and glamorized money spraying through music videos, films, and celebrity culture. From scenes in Zobie Michael's movies where characters shower cash on dancers to Davido, Wizkid, and Flavor tossing notes on stage, audiences have come to associate money spraying with celebration, masculinity, and prestige. Ironically, these same artists are now being courted by agencies like the CBN, EFCC, and NFIU to become ambassadors of responsible celebration. The key lies in co opting pop culture, not confronting it. Ideas for industry led transformation include creating storylines in Nollywood films where characters face consequences for currency abuse and learn better practices, releasing Afrobeat songs and music videos that promote clean gifting culture with catchy slogans, launching a Respect the Naira challenge across TikTok with rewards for the best responsible celebration content, partnering with social media influencers to design wedding and party templates that uphold the law without sacrificing vibe. Economic ripple effects, criminalizing spending or protecting value. The unintended consequences of criminalizing money spraying at public functions are slowly surfacing, particularly in sectors that depend on ceremonial expenditure. The Nigerian events industry, which includes DJs, caterers, photographers, dancers, ushers, and traditional entertainers, has expressed growing concern over what they perceive as a looming decline in patronage and celebration culture. Money spraying, beyond its cultural symbolism, also serves a practical purpose in sustaining liquidity within informal markets. During weddings, birthdays, funerals, and religious events, sprayed cash is often quickly redistributed through tips, dance incentives, or charitable gestures, keeping petty cash flowing among low income earners. Banning such public spending practices, if not replaced with viable alternatives, risks suppressing this fluid, bottom up circulation. Industry stakeholders warn that a compliance chill could lead to reduced event sizes as celebrants shy away from large crowds to avoid scrutiny, decreased spending, particularly from diaspora returnees accustomed to lavish cash displays, lower revenue for entertainers, especially traditional musicians whose performances depend on sprayed money as reward. Kelechi Maduabuchi, an event planner in Abuja, told Business Day Nigeria, "We support protecting the Naira, but the government must understand how money flows in our celebrations. If people can't spray, they might stop celebrating altogether or take the money underground." To mitigate this, policymakers must carefully distinguish between celebration and currency sabotage. Overreach could trigger an informalization of celebration spending, where guests carry out illegal spraying discreetly or even shift events entirely into private residences beyond the scope of regulation. Diaspora influence, a cultural bridge or breach. Nigerians in the diaspora, particularly in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and parts of Europe, are major patrons of home based ceremonies. Their remittances fund high profile events, and their presence often escalates the scale and spectacle of Nigerian celebrations. Ironically, these diaspora celebrants are usually unaware of local laws criminalizing money spraying. Many assume that lavish gifting is part of the cultural comeback. Upon return, they emulate social media celebrities, sometimes unaware that they are being recorded and later reported to authorities. This raises key issues. How do Nigerian missions abroad educate diaspora communities about Naira abuse laws? Should EFCC or CBN create outreach programs through embassies and diaspora forums? Can diaspora celebrations become pilot sites for compliant celebration models using digital tools? There's also a growing case for collaboration with platforms like Sendwave, World Remit, and Flutterwave, whose user bases include diaspora Nigerians. These fintechs can embed compliance messages and celebration alternatives directly into their user experience, thereby localizing the law at the point of remittance. If mobilized correctly, diaspora communities could shift from unwitting violators to champions of compliant cultural celebrations, serving as a bridge between global exposure and local transformation. Policy roadmap from enforcement to empowerment. To move beyond arrests and social media warnings, Nigeria needs a multi tiered strategy that fuses enforcement with education, innovation, and cultural empathy. A forward thinking policy roadmap should include the following elements: 1. Enforcement with equity. Establish clear guidelines distinguishing criminal intent from cultural expression. Train EFCC and police officers on proportional enforcement, especially in rural communities. Introduce a graduated penalty system, warnings, fines, educational courses, rather than default criminal prosecution. 2. Mass sensitization launch a nationwide Now Celebrate Responsibly campaign led by celebrities, religious leaders, and influencers. Integrate Naira Respect modules into National Youth Service Corps, NYSC orientation, civic education curriculums, and university student unions. 3. Cultural alternatives promote the use of gift baskets, digital wallets, decorated donation boxes, and mobile scanners at public events. Develop Naira Respect kits for party planners, guidelines, digital tools, sample setups. 4. Legal Reform Review Section 21-3 of the CBN Act to modernize language, incorporate digital contexts, and create space for lawful celebration alternatives. Amend relevant sections to define willful defacement versus ceremonial expression more clearly. 5. Innovation funding. Provide microgrants to tech startups that design celebration-friendly fintech tools, e.g., event e-wallets, spray-free tipping apps, and trackable gift dashboards. Such a roadmap must be built with community ownership and cultural pride, not shame, as the foundation. Managing backlash. EFCC and CBN's delicate balancing act. The EFCC has faced backlash not only for the arrests, but also for the optics of selective enforcement. The public has questioned why high-profile politicians accused of corruption receive prolonged investigations while celebrities are swiftly arrested, why ordinary citizens are penalized while state-sponsored events still see public spraying with impunity, why the crackdown appears focused on optics over systemic reform. To manage the backlash and reclaim public trust, the EFCC and CBN must become more transparent, consistent, and human-centered in their approach. Possible steps include quarterly public reports on Naira abuse cases, who was charged, convicted, or warned. Public education partnerships with Nollywood, radio stations, and street drama groups. Anonymous reporting platforms for flagging abusive public behavior without fear of reprisal. Engagement town halls in major markets, schools, and transport hubs. As Nigeria navigates inflation, economic strain, and a weakening Naira, protecting the dignity of the currency is essential, but so is protecting the dignity of the people whose traditions give meaning to the money. Comparative insights, Rwanda, Morocco, and Botswana, as models of fiscal cultural balance. Across the African continent, several countries have faced similar challenges of aligning deep-rooted cultural practices with evolving financial discipline and governance standards. Lessons from nations like Rwanda, Morocco, and Botswana offer instructive comparisons on how to implement behavioral change without triggering social alienation. Rwanda. Institutional discipline meets cultural reinvention. Rwanda has built a reputation for zero tolerance on currency abuse, public littering, and disrespect for national symbols. Under President Paul Kagame's leadership, the country initiated an extensive civic reorientation program following the 1994 genocide, centered around Ndi Umunyarwanda, a philosophy of citizenship, unity, and responsibility. Key takeaways: all Rwandans, from ministers to market traders, are subject to the same civic rules. The Office of the Ombudsman and local administrative units organize regular public education campaigns on ethical conduct, including financial integrity. Cultural events like weddings are now routinely held using electronic gifting systems, supported by MTN Rwanda and Airtel Money. Rwanda demonstrates that behavior can be transformed over time with consistent law enforcement, community level sensitization, and digital integration. Morocco, harmonizing festivity with modernity. In Morocco, public gifting during weddings and family events is common, but public currency abuse is rare. This is largely due to strong religious teachings discouraging showiness and extravagance, use of customized envelopes for wedding donations, often collected quietly before or after the ceremony, government collaboration with imams and mosque committees to emphasize financial decorum during Friday sermons. The Moroccan experience underscores the power of faith based institutions in shaping financial ethics, something Nigeria's interfaith community could leverage to support CBN's campaign. Botswana, legal consistency builds trust. Botswana, often cited as one of Africa's most transparent democracies, enforces public laws uniformly. There is little tolerance for open currency abuse, and the practice is largely non existent, not because it was banned, but because public education systems teach respect for national symbols from a young age. Politicians and traditional chiefs model compliance, rarely engaging in public excess. The Botswana Pula is a symbol of national pride, widely trusted and used, even during celebratory events. Botswana shows that institutional consistency and leadership by example matter more than laws themselves in changing social behavior. Naira abuse and the informal economy, a complex relationship. In Nigeria, where the informal sector constitutes over 60% of GDP, financial behavior is rarely influenced by regulation alone. It is shaped by cultural trust, peer influence, and practicality. Spraying money at events, while legally a violation, is embedded within an informal economic system that includes party vendors, whose pricing often accounts for expected sprayback returns. Traditional musicians who rely on direct cash sprays for song dedications and praise chants, hired dancers and local performers who collect sprayed cash as tips, not wages, mobile cash changers who exchange small denominations at events for spraying purposes. A blanket criminalization of spraying disrupts these informal exchanges without offering alternative value chains. Instead of erasing the ecosystem, reform should focus on redesigning it. Recommended interventions: formalize cash exchange vendors through micro-licensing at events, with guidelines on legal denominations, create EFCC licensed tipping platforms for events with instant mobile credit transfers linked to performers, encourage event management certification programs that include modules on financial legality and ethical celebrations. By regulating the informal celebration economy, Nigeria can retain its cultural vibrancy while minimizing economic harm and ensuring compliance. Real voices, real shifts, adaptation in action. Despite the confusion and fear surrounding the Naira abuse crackdown, many Nigerians are beginning to innovate around the law. Examples of early adaptation are emerging. In Owerri, a wedding featured a blessing tree, a decorative tree where guests hung envelopes or mobile QR codes attached to branches. It was both festive and compliant. In Kaduna, a youth group created an app called Spray Pay, allowing partygoers to spray cash virtually with animated effects and live notifications shown on screens during the ceremony. In Benin City, A traditional musician collaborated with his clients to replace spraying with digital performance tokens, which guests scan via smartphones to support the artists. These stories reflect the Nigerian spirit of resilience, where law meets innovation and culture finds new ways to express itself. They also show that compliance doesn't have to mean compromise. With creative thinking and social investment, even the most entrenched traditions can evolve. Governance, identity, and the African currency. Ethos toward a continental awakening. The broader implications of Nigeria's campaign against Naira abuse extend beyond its borders. It touches the core of African identity and governance in the 21st century. How do African nations reconcile inherited state structures with indigenous expressions of joy, status, and belonging? At its heart, the issue of currency respect is not merely legal, it is profoundly symbolic. The way citizens treat their national currency reflects how they perceive the state itself as a legitimate authority worthy of trust and reverence, or as a distant extractive institution divorced from communal life. This symbolism is particularly relevant in post colonial African states where monetary systems were often imposed or inherited with little local relevance. Currencies are pegged or influenced by foreign institutions, e.g., the CFA franc. State legitimacy is still contested, especially in regions marginalized by governance. In such contexts, money spraying is not just defacement. It can also be read as reclaiming power over a symbol that feels alien, distant, or imposed. But for governance to evolve and for African currencies to command both legal authority and emotional allegiance, states must democratize monetary ownership by making the economy work for everyday citizens, build trust in institutions so that national laws are seen not as weapons but as shared rules, include traditional leaders, artists, and cultural custodians in the shaping, not just enforcing of these rules. A currency must not only be protected, it must be loved. That love is not automatic. It is cultivated through fairness, inclusion, and shared prosperity. Class sensitive approaches to long term behavioral change. No law, no matter how well intended, can transform behavior in a society as economically diverse and culturally layered as Nigeria without deliberate stratification. The approach to reform must recognize class based differences in motivation, access, and risk exposure. 1. Upper class celebrities and influencers. Motivation, prestige, public visibility, fan base admiration. Reform tool, use social contracts and brand partnerships to encourage compliant behavior. Strategy, make legal celebration fashionable through sponsorships, branded compliance at events, and red carpet celebrations that reward subtlety over extravagance. 2. Middle class professionals. Motivation, social status, corporate respectability, community role modeling. Reform tool, engage them through HR policies, event planning standards, and community awards for ethical celebration. Strategy, promote responsible giving as a marker of maturity, discipline, and professionalism. 3. Working class and informal economy groups. Motivation, daily survival, symbolic recognition, occasional communal pride. Reform tool, subsidize access to digital gifting tools, create compliant celebration certification kits for event vendors. Strategy, provide real alternatives, not just laws, create reward systems, e.g., local government plaques, radio recognition, for communities that adopt new norms. Tailoring the message to the lived realities of each group ensures buy in not by force, but by relevance. The role of civic pride in currency protection. At the foundation of this movement must be a renaissance of civic pride, a collective ownership of symbols like the flag, anthem, and currency. Civic pride is what makes a person bend down to pick up a fallen Naira note, not because of fear of arrest, but because they believe it matters. To instill this, Organized National Currency Week, a series of school events, community parades, and media campaigns celebrating the Naira's history, design, and meaning. Run Know Your Note challenges where people identify features of real notes versus counterfeits. Involve students in designing future currency prototypes, creating a generational attachment to money as not just economic but cultural identity. Let citizens see the Naira not just as a tool of exchange, but as a canvas of their collective story, featuring their heroes, languages, landmarks, and ideals. Strategic framework, balancing cultural authenticity and fiscal discipline. From Nigeria's Naira abuse crackdown to broader continental struggles with modernizing traditional practices, a clear roadmap is emerging for how African nations can move forward without alienating their people or erasing cultural identity. A balanced framework must include 1. Legislative clarity with cultural sensitivity. Laws must be unambiguous about what constitutes currency abuse, while allowing room for cultural expression through regulated alternatives like digital gifting or symbolic items. 2. Consistent, fair, and transparent enforcement. No law can succeed where selective enforcement or elite impunity persists. Uniform application across socioeconomic and political lines is essential to legitimacy. 3. Multi-level public education. From radio jingles in local dialects to university debates and primary school skits, currency protection campaigns must be deeply rooted in public education, not just punishment. 4. Inclusive policy development. Traditional leaders, artists, tech innovators, and cultural scholars must be involved in shaping policies that affect how Africans celebrate, give, and gather. 5. Innovation and investment governments and private partners should support the digital transformation of celebration culture, offering grants and tools to modernize without sterilizing joy. Lessons from Nigeria between preservation and progress. What started as an EFCC enforcement episode has become a national and potentially continental conversation about identity, governance, and modernization. Nigeria's handling of Naira abuse illustrates several critical truths. Cultural change cannot be imposed by force. It must be nurtured through dialogue, creativity, and example. National currencies are not just instruments of trade, they are symbols of statehood, unity, and sovereignty. Institutions gain moral authority when they pursue public enlightenment, not just prosecutions. Civic responsibility is sustainable only when citizens see themselves as co-owners of national values, not merely subjects of enforcement. Final advice to African leaders. To Africa's presidents, ministers, central bankers, and civic authorities, you are the custodians of a continent in transition between its timeless traditions and the demands of a rapidly changing world. You must walk a path where cultural vibrancy and institutional order are not enemies, but partners. We urge you to listen deeply to your people, especially the young and the rural. Embrace innovation not just in economics, but in social practices and civic engagement. Lead by example, showing dignity in celebration, modesty in public conduct, and respect for the very symbols that hold your nations together. Let not the enforcement of the law be a hammer, but a compass, guiding Africa toward a future where progress does not come at the cost of identity and where tradition is not an excuse for disorder. Key messages summarized. Currency abuse is a national concern, not just a legal infraction. It affects trust, inflation, and national dignity. Money spraying is more than law breaking. It's cultural expression deeply rooted in social psychology, aspiration, and economic circulation. Reform must be multidimensional, blending law enforcement, civic education, cultural sensitivity, and innovation. Comparative African experiences show that behavior change is possible when trust, fairness, and leadership integrity exist. African leaders must lead not just with power, but with wisdom, upholding laws while nurturing the soul of their nations. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV, where every story has a deeper truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your views below. Subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss our powerful insights on Africa's evolving identity. Together, let's shape the narrative.